Today at T-Mobile, I'm joined by a special co-anchor.
What up, everybody? It's your boy, Big Snoop Deal Double G.
Snoop, where can people go to find great deals?
Head to T-Mobile.com and get 4 iPhone 16s with Apple Intelligence on us, plus 4 lines for $25.
That's quite a deal, Snoop. And when you switch to T-Mobile, you can save versus the other big guys' comparable plans plus streaming.
Respect. We up out of here.
See how you can save on wireless and streaming versus the other big guys at T-Mobile.com/switch. Apple Intelligence requires iOS 18.1 or later.
At T-Mobile, our critical mission is providing unparalleled 5G coverage for when connectivity is mission critical. Introducing T-Priority, America's best 5G network experience for first responders, even in times of congestion. More capacity, faster speeds, better coverage. T-Priority from T-Mobile, built for tomorrow's emergencies, ready today. Discover more at t-priority.com.
For qualifying organizations on eligible rate plans, coverage not available in some areas and may be impacted by emergencies.
This episode is brought to you by Prime Video. In the small town of Holland, Michigan, nothing is ever what it seems. Behind the tulip festivals and pretty houses lay dark secrets that threaten to tear a marriage apart. Nicole Kidman stars in this darkly twisted thriller about a wife and mother whose quest to uncover her husband's secrets may get her more than she bargained for. Holland, streaming on Prime Video March 27th.
Wonder-working power in the precious...
Incredible as they seem, are not the results of mass hysteria.
You may wish to adjust the dial. You're currently tuned into the wrong station. I looked down to my feet and beheld a small, swirling mass of black and yellow and violence. Wasps. 2 of them, tangled in a furious little clump on the ground. I'd already been pissed off because I was taking out the garbage in that irrational little way that you get when the can fills up and you blame some other imaginary person who must have been throwing their trash in there. Pissed off because the bag was dripping stinky yellow specks onto the laminate floor, and then deck, and then concrete. Because it was one of those Ontario autumn days after a rainstorm, when the sky suddenly clear, and UV rays hitting a 10 or 11 on the index crash down on your shoulders and the back of your neck, unimpeded. And now, wasps. It was a time they'd lorded over that backyard. A few years back, they'd made a nest in the neighbor's back garage, entering and exiting from a crack in the concrete block wall that adjoined our property. Most of the day, they'd be buzzing around, launching horrible little bio-airstrikes against anything that entered their vicinity. No backyard barbecues that year, or morning coffees out on the veranda. I tried smoking them out at one point, but that just made them angrier, escalated the conflict. In the end, I went nuclear, taking my cock and gun and sealing that crack in the early morning, sealing them in to starve or suffocate or God knows what. If you can believe it, they managed to dig their way out several days later, though much reduced in number. They didn't manage it a second time. I didn't think of myself as a violent or hateful person, but I had taken some guilty satisfaction out of that. There hadn't been another nest since then, but the sight of them still brought up ugly feelings. And here were 2 of them, fighting on the ground, the hateful little devils. Over what? Scrap of food? Some hardened sap or a sorry bisected horsefly? Or maybe the right to mate? Already in a mood from the heat, or any number of small things. Seeing them made it that much worse. A jerk reaction, nothing really rational to it. It's not like they were bothering me in that instance. But still. Though at the same time, I almost felt some small sense of pity. They must have been going at it for a while because they seemed half dead already. Brief bursts of speed and fury would be followed by an interstice of stillness as they gathered up the energy to try and kill each other again. Maybe that was my rationale for what I did next, grabbing a nearby broom and bringing it down on the poor little bastards. They were still wasps, after all, and the penalty for being a wasp was death. Make it quick, though. A cruel act of mercy. Except my strike had not been cruel enough. I lifted the broom, and one of the fucks was quite dead, well and truly gooshed. The other lay still, though intact, and then, after a second, twitched, and then burst to activity and flew away, weakly and erratically, but still too quick for me to get another swing at. I stood there for a moment, thinking... well, not thinking anything, to be honest. I guess I didn't get him. That was it. There were no more profound thoughts to have about it. I laid the broom back against the shed, wiped a bead of sweat from my brow, and went back inside. Went about the rest of my day, finding other little things to be pissed off about. Work, or the broken washer that my landlord was refusing to replace, or the weekend trip my friends were going on that I couldn't afford to take the time off for. The only victory of the day, perhaps, the meager feeling of control from that morning's act of violence. Though I'd have never actively thought of it in those terms. No, such an admission was only for my subconscious mind. An act only to be celebrated in half-sleep delusion with my head on the pillow. And with the buzzing of wasps tickling my mind, darkness fell upon me. When I opened my eyes, some time later, the darkness was still there. Groggy and confused, I reached around expecting soft mattress and finding cold, hard ground, of what material I could not tell, something sleek between metal and plastic. Trying to get up, my head knocked against a surface made of that same foreign material. Feeling around in the dark, it seemed like I was in a space roughly 4 by 4 by 4 feet, though irregularly shaped, so it was hard to even guess. The drowsiness of waking wore off as I pawed around, and this was seeming less and less like the kind of nightmare you have early morning after hitting your alarm once or twice. Panic crept in. I started pounding on those walls, my breathing heavy and strained. Then, all of a sudden, a sliver of light came from nowhere and nearly blinded me. As I covered my eyes, I heard something, a strange clicking vshk that my brain recognized as some facsimile of door opening. Squinting, I could see as a section of the wall sort of spiraled away, like if you peeled the skin off an apple and the inside, where I was hollow instead of flesh. Light came pouring in, orange and artificial, and in the sudden brightness I could just make out 2 dark silhouettes. Before I could ask where I was, before I could say anything, there were hands on me, with thick gloves made of rubber or vinyl, and I was being dragged out. That light intensified, blaring down orange from multiple sources overhead. All around me, the walls were irregular and dimpled. They shone with a sort of blue-black gleam, and I'd have thought they looked alive if I wasn't so sure they were made of that same quasi-metallic substance that small, dark room had felt like. It was hard to gather any other details. I was being dragged quickly and violently by powerful limbs, a hand around my left wrist and another on my right shoulder. I raised my head and tried to protest, but was met with a quick crack to the back of the head. Not strong enough to knock me out, but controlled enough to let me know that that was by choice. What the fuck was going on? Had I been kidnapped in the night? taken to some horrible secret place to have my organs harvested? Wincing and tasting blood running along my gums, I looked back to see there was a third figure trailing just behind, dark and broad, swaddled in a strange-looking uniform made of that rubbery stuff, halfway between a cloak and a hazmat suit. Through a single large respirator on its face, a garbled sound drooled out, low and buzzing. I did not understand, but the message was clear. Shut your mouth and don't try anything. It was almost like I could hear the words inside my skull. We soon came to the end of a long hallway, another vshk. Hearing it again, there was an unmistakable, organic quality to that sound that made me feel sick, and the terminal wall opened up. I was tossed beyond the threshold, and the wall closed behind me. Open space now, relatively. Groaning up to my feet, I found myself in a circular room, wider than the hallway, maybe the length of a city bus. One of those harsh orange lights hung overhead in the center of the ceiling, but just the one, so that the edges of that chamber were still in blue-black darkness. I stepped toward the center, emerging from that cloak of shadow, feeling some ancient survivalist part of my brain whisper, "Danger," as I did. There was something lying on the ground, a small lump of something, and it stank like. From the corner of my eye, a burst of color, shape, and motion. Pink, wiry, violently quick. It rushed out of the dark, and a half-second later I was on the ground, and it was on top of me, pounding on me, swiping with sharp claws, lunging with clicking bites as I shielded my face. My life was flashing before my eyes, hiding under a desk on my first day of kindergarten, retching over a toilet during my first hangover, seeing those two wasps fighting on the ground, getting rejected by my first crush at the school dance, my mother dying in the hospital, the wasps killing each other on the ground, grudges, revenge, the wasps tangled, dying. I imagined some cruel or kind God looking down on me in that moment, along with the thing that was on top of me. I imagined it swinging down its great, godly broom, crushing this enemy, and me, miraculously unharmed, flying off to see another sunrise. Sharp, square teeth sunk into my shoulder and brought me screaming back to reality. The broom was not coming. I would need to save myself. I kicked out with all my strength and felt my feet hit flesh and rib bone. The thing coughed and sputtered as I launched it off me. Claws that had been dug into my forearms went flying away, taking nice little chunks of my skin as a parting gift. I scrambled to my feet, and the thing was crawling on all fours, crawling to the center of the room, where it plopped on its side, heaving. And now that it was not quite still, but slowed, its features came into sharper focus. Pink, gaunt flesh, hardly even flesh, skin stretched taut over bone, and more the pink of bubblegum than my own peachy complexion. Wiry arms and legs, each ending in 6 digits. A ghastly face with a short trunk nose and a pronounced underbite, and tufts of greasy gray hair that sprinkled its naked body. No motion save for that heaving breath and the occasional spasm. Not quite a human, but close enough to it, some convergent form, probably a foot shorter than me, half my weight. I hadn't thought I'd kicked it that hard, but I guess it was hard enough. One of its ribs was clearly broken and displaced. The area of his torso was quickly swelling and turning dark with subdermal bleeding. Something had been pierced that shouldn't be. I saw now that it was also reaching for something, that small something that I'd spotted before it attacked me. It was, yes, a small scrap of meat. It pulled the little portion toward itself, slowly, weakly, tried to bring it to its mouth and nibble with cracked teeth. Then it let out a gasp and fell truly still. It was a lot all at once, you know, and I did not have the expertise or mental fortitude to process everything all in that moment, which is not a condemnation. Few people would. All that in hardly a minute. And so I was entirely unprepared when the words came slithering into my ear. Well done. I fell to my knees. The voice, if you could call it such, pulsed in the back of my head and spread to the rest of my skull from there. It felt like a violation, like someone had stuck a giant syringe filled with words into my head and pushed the plunger in slowly. Where am I? I struggled to say it. Another throb of pain in my head, the taste and burn of vinegar in my nose. It will not speak. We have not brought it here to speak. The chamber door opened, and those rubber-clad figures filed in. Two brought me to my feet, as a third dragged that pink corpse away, its head falling sickly to one side as it was, in a way that let me see directly into its face, one transfixed with pain, hunger, and fear. I was dragged back down the hall to my cell, and along the way one of the guards jammed a device into my bitten shoulder and pressed its trigger. A small rush of liquid entered the wound, stinging terribly. After that, I was thrown back into blackness. They hurled the meat scraps at my feet, along with a small sloshing canteen, and my prison spiraled closed once again. I sat there for some time. Eventually, my stomach growled, and a good while after that, I finally started picking at the small piece of raw, gristly, stinking meat. I did not know when the next chance to eat would come. Well done. We haven't brought it here to speak. Well, then why was I here? I feared I already knew. It was impossible to tell how much time had passed, but at some point I started to fall asleep. And as I did, a terrible thing happened. Completely out of my control, you understand? Thoughts of everything that had happened that day drifted through my mind, the torments, the violence. But as sleep began to take me, those thoughts went to that lifeless pink body. How I had done that, and been able to leave because of it, take the spoils. And the last thing I felt as I went under was deep and earnest satisfaction. The next day they took me again, and as they did I looked over at my shoulder. The signs of the bite were there, but had filled with hard scar tissue already, and showed no signs of festering. The chamber door opened and they pushed me in. It closed behind me, and the wide berth of that arena almost felt like freedom compared to the claustrophobia of my quarters. I scanned my surroundings. It was here somewhere. Something was here somewhere. Even if I didn't fully understand why, I knew that I was here to fight. My only path forward was to survive, to win. It was the only way I could see to escape this place. Where were my friends now? I wondered. Had they realized I was gone? Or were they still off in Toledo, drinking wine and poking fun at me in my bottom-rung job? A bright little spark of fury popped off inside me for a moment, but was quickly smothered again by fear. I needed to focus. I slowly circled the perimeter, that ring of darkness, shuddering, eyes darting back and forth. I wouldn't be first to enter the light, be taken by surprise again. I waited, until It was tall and slender, green, shiny, and hard, much less a man than the creature yesterday had been, almost like a cricket standing on its back 2 legs, but with malleable, dexterous hands and an air of some intelligence. It took a trepidatious step into the light, toward the meat. I immediately realized, as it too cautiously looked around, that it did not know I was there. And I would not waste that chance. Swallowing my fear, I burst from the darkness, pink and violently quick. The creature turned, with a look of as much shock as its bug face could muster. It raised its forearms in defense, and I took it to the ground. I beat on it, hammered on it relentlessly. The creature was making sounds, not sounds that entered my mind, but the sound of pleading words from its mouth. But I could not stop. I imagined those strong legs kicking up and breaking my ribs as I had done before, and I knew I couldn't allow that. I wouldn't. Raising my fist high, I brought it up and over the bugman's guard and down into one of its big, glossy black eyes. It burst like a giant tapioca pearl, and the creature screamed like a cicada in summer, and screamed before stopping and going limp. I stood, black fluid dripping from my fingers. This time, expecting the voice, so that it did not make my head throb quite so much. This violence pleases us. The door opened once again. Breathing heavily, wiping away sweat from my brow and saliva foam from my mouth, I took my time, and seemed to be allowed to take my time, to collect my prize as the cricket corpse was dragged off. I made my way to the exit, where for a tense moment I stood there, meeting the gaze of the guards. One of them looked to the other, then back to me. It gave the slightest nod, and I was permitted to pass the threshold on my own. They then took me to my cell, or a new one, rather, one slightly larger than the last, with perforations in the ceiling that let in bare traces of soft light. Sleep came easier that night. Easier than ever, perhaps. This continued on for days, maybe weeks, or even months. If I had to fight, if I had to kill, then so be it. This was survival, after all. Whatever moral qualms I had, I put aside and embraced my circumstances. With this came focus, and an appreciation for the challenges I faced. Greater with each battle, but never great enough, it seemed. There was the giant centipede. I'd entered to find it already gorging itself on my food. It approached from behind, placing a firm foot on the pincered false head of its backside, while I grabbed it around the middle. I squeezed and squeezed and squeezed until its back armor plates broke and caved in. It fell to the floor in a heap. Then there had been the melee, made all the more dangerous by the simple weapons provided. But my skills had been honed for the task. The furred ape thing I simply clubbed across the head. The amorphous being of jelly, slow but seemingly impervious, I stabbed deeply with a spear, piercing its central organ and causing its whole body to spill to the floor in a puddle of vital essence. The flitting, anthropomorphic dragonfly I brought down with a net before stomping on its throat. Back in school, teachers called my performance below average. If they could have seen me then, as I fought a man-shark bare-fisted in a neutral gel-like medium, dragging it to the top of the arena and pushing its head above the surface, drowning it with air. Let them fucking say it again. And with each victory, my living conditions improved along with my standing. I now ate 3 servings of meat, with a slop of dense starch. My holding was wide, with high ceilings, and a view out to the blackness of space and the stars beyond. Finally, there was the great beetle, with enough size and strength to crush me if I wasn't careful. But with the metal spike I was provided, it was a simple task. As the beast charged, I took as low a stance as I could, tipping the spike forward. The beetle lost its nerve before I did, rearing back, allowing me to lunge forward and crack open its soft underbelly. I cannot describe to you the feeling of that accomplishment. In all my years, I had never reached such a height, such elation, not in work or school or in childhood play or in the arms of a lover. I screamed, primal from the gut. And it seemed I was not alone in my appraisal. Somewhere above, along the chamber's rim, I could hear another section of wall open, one I'd not known could. A lower intensity light framed this opening in the darkness, and I could see the outline of figures standing there. I raised my head to that upper window. On either side, there were two of those guards in their strange rubber suits, looking down, faceless and imperious. And between them, a third figure, altogether larger and more resplendent. Its dress was still made from that glossy material, which hung down more as a cape around its body. Sharp, glistening pauldrons with Baroque carving jutted out from the shoulders, and the cowl over its head was topped with a magnificent crest, spearing forward in a double prong. I lowered myself to one knee and laid down my spike. Some part of me seemed to think it was the appropriate thing to do. Then came the voice. By this time, as much reward as my meals. Truly, it has performed beyond our greatest expectations. Rise, champion. I did, and my mind buzzed with questions, but I remained quiet. I had the feeling that even my thoughts would be taken as speech out of turn. It wishes to understand. Insolent, but understandable. The central figure turned ever so slightly to one of its fellows, and then the other. You see, my children, it is a paragon of its race, bold, violent, without conscience, very admirable. We knew it would give us good sport. It looked down at me now, intently. Until that moment, I'd felt the gaze beyond that cowl only looking through me. It raised hands to its head and pulled, removing hood and crown both. And beneath, well, you can guess by now, can't you? As appropriate as it would have been to be shocked, despite how correct that would have been. My heart knew what to expect. Hard chitin, bristling with hard black and yellow hair, large, glossy, compound eyes that seemed to take in every part of my being, cruel mandibles that could not possibly be used for speech, as I know it, a mouth only suited for consumption and hate. Its life was nothing before this place, an existence of many little nothings. But we saw its potential, the anger deep within, the callousness it displayed for life, the joy it took in harm. And so, the words stopped for a moment, and I heard something else, heard it with my ears. An awful buzzing sound, choked and sporadic. It came from the one who spoke, and as it did, they raised a hand to their mouth, trying to stifle the sound. The two that flanked it started to buzz as well, their shoulders convulsing as they did. The three of them looking down on me and laughing. And so, we thought it would be amusing to include it in our games, to pluck it from its home and time, well within our power, and bring it here. And how it surprised us immediately, killing before even commanded. Many of its opponents had survived for years in the arena, but they never survived it. This gave me pause. It was true. Nobody, no thing had ever told me to kill. I'd made that choice on my own. My guts twisted, and my heart filled with a pride that made them twist even more. And now it is champion. So now, champion, it has a choice. Up above, it placed the crown back upon its head. If the champion wishes, we will return it to its home. A prize well won, and it can rest assured that its legacy will live forever in these hallowed halls. Home. The word seemed strange now. But yes, that's what I'd been fighting for, wasn't it? But then I wondered, when was the last time I'd even thought of home? My mind flashed with thoughts of loved ones, and I could not see their faces. I could not hear their voices. I could smell garbage and feel heat on my neck and shoulders, and the atmospheric pressure of that tiny home I'd hated. See and hear wasps pouring from the hole in that concrete block wall. The window began to close, and my empress spoke one last time. Unless it would rather stay. With it, the choice resides. And hearing its laughter in my mind and in my ears, the window was sealed up, leaving only deafening silence. It's all hard to believe, I know, but it's all far too true. And I know this message will never be enough. You'll always have questions and doubts. Perhaps them allowing me to send this back to you is itself a cruel act of mercy. But please know that I'm happy now. I found my place, my purpose. Admit it. You think so too. This is where I belong, fighting the other creatures, like me. Save face if you want. Tell each other that I've been changed, that I've been forced to adapt. But the reality is, this was always me. And I sleep all the better for it. I am a killer, a slayer. I am champion. The Wrong Station is made possible with the generous support of our listeners on Patreon. Visit today at patreon.com/thewrongstation. You can also support us by leaving a rating and review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever it is you tune into the show. This week's episode, Champion, was written and performed by Anthony Botello. Thank you to D-Fumps, Gene Mercer, Jan, Johnny Jill, Ivan, and Let the Dragon Burn for helping us keep the lights, well, off. The Wrong Station is co-produced by Alexander Saxton, Anthony Botello, and Jacob Duarte Spiel, with music composed and performed by Alon Citron and arranged for the viola and performed by Viola Schmidt. You can follow The Wrong Station on social media at The Wrong Station and email us at thewrongstation@gmail.com. And until next time, thank you for listening.